Welcome to the show. So you're about to listen to episode 2 of our 3-part series on the JFK assassination and, of course, the abundant amount of substances that JFK was using. So we just recap a little bit from episode 1. JFK, it's not a big deal that he was getting prescribed opioids, right? It was that he was doctor shopping and seeing doctors multiple times a week, and then his behaviors with substances would lead us to infer that he was abusing this medication. Why? Because he ultimately starts taking a methamphetamine shot. He's drinking, and he just displays poor judgment and impulsivity. So, using Demerol, a very high-powered opioid, and methadone doesn't constitute someone as a drug addict, but using those mass amounts combined with an amphetamine, benzos, barbiturates, alcohol, marijuana, maybe some LSD, and of course methamphetamine tend to make that substance use more of a negative behavior and drug use. And there's just kind of no way around it. So, as we go into episode 2, it's about a half hour. We start the discussion on the assassination of President Kennedy. And then our last episode, part 3, is like an hour-long deep dive where we lay out the evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald probably didn't kill President Kennedy. Now, if you have other evidence or don't agree, that's awesome. Send me an email, historyondrugspodcast@gmail.com. I know there's tons of conspiracy theories around. I know people love to argue about this stuff, but I'm just laying it out. Let me clean something up, too, from episode 1 when we talked about the substance use. I described an amphetamine as a central nervous system depressant. It's not. I meant to refer to opioids, right? So he was taking the rich man's speedball, opioids, and amphetamines, right? So you have a central nervous system depressant and then a stimulant that's quite dangerous. Today, doctors might prescribe that, but there's got to be a very significant reason why. So, listen, I hope you enjoy, and just a couple things to think about in the Kennedy assassination. Like, documents, thousands of documents have been held undercover for over 60 years. So no matter what your beliefs are on this topic, it's why? Why are we hiding things if it was just a straight one-shooter, lone nut gunman, right? Still to this day, they haven't released all the documents. So that would tend anyone with basic critical thinking skills to be like, something's not right here. And as we discuss in this episode and the last episode, at every corner in this investigation, something isn't right. One thing I didn't get to, because I don't wing it, but I'm just freestyling and riffing and trying to get a real true presentation instead of just being like one of those AI podcasts or reading a script. So I might miss a few things or jump around. But something we didn't get in there was Jack Ruby, right? The man who ultimately kills Oswald in the basement of the police station or the city hall. I think it was a combination of both. He dies 3 years into prison. And his last interview, I mean, he says a lot of crazy stuff, but in his last interview, he basically says, I can't tell you. You would be amazed at what happened, and I'm not in a position to tell you what happened. Now, the government sent their own doctors in to evaluate Oswald in 1964, and they deemed him crazy, just another nut, which would go in line with a lot of people in this case that has stuff to say. They would be coined as a crazy person. And based on some of the documents and the things that Jack Ruby said, yeah, he was a little bit out there, but he's the one that killed Lee Harvey Oswald. And you can tell in his final interview, he's scared to talk about why. So just think about that. So we've got part 2 coming up. Enjoy it. And then we've got part 3 to follow. I'd love to hear your feedback.
So what also happens is Kennedy pisses off the military industrial complex. And if you're not familiar with that, there's a book written in the early 1900s. I forget the guy's name. And he basically says the future of America is war, right? It drives our industry, right? And if we think about the history of America, like early on, it was tobacco, it was huge, right? Huge trade. What we could do made people wealthy, and it was a driving force, right? And then we get into like the Civil War and the Gilded Age, and it's the steel industry and the railroads and steel because we're building skyscrapers and city. And it's driving America, making us wealthy, and everybody's clinging on to it. Well, now after like World War One, and we're moving in after the Great Depression, it becomes, and then into World War II, the military industrial complex. If we're at war, we're building tanks and guns and ammunitions, and then there's OEM manufacturers supplying parts to build those things, and then shipping companies to ship those things, and trucking and warehouses and box makers to box those things. And so to maintain this, we got to spread our CIA assets around the world, spread democracy around the world. Let's try to put down communism and put down other beliefs that aren't ours, like similar to our goals, right? And if we keep this machine going, we keep a little bit of war going, but we keep a military presence going, and do a little peacocking, we could keep the military industrial complex going. And that's what a lot of these old guys and power did. And you know what? And I'm going to jump ahead just to give an example of this type of thing. Later on, in the 80s, that would move, we'd still have the military industrial complex, but then what we try to do as America through the CIA, through our own government, through smoke and mirrors, was oil, right? Commodities. Is we George Bush, who was a CIA guy, George Bush Sr., right? He was an old military industrial complex guy. He wanted to go to war in the Middle East because he wanted to control the oil. This is not conspiracy theory. That was going to drive America. We control the oil, we control the weapons, we control the industry and the manufacturing, and this keeps us as the power, right? And if we have the power and the money and we can have the best weapons and America can be safe, and that dream of being free and capitalism in America can exist. But not everybody agreed with that. Like, it was kind of shitty, right? Because a lot of people were left out of that. And Kennedy, based on his policies and a lot of stuff he said, he wasn't a military industrial complex guy. And that made people very unhappy as well. So we've covered the substances at this. I think we went like a half hour or so on the history of Kennedy on drugs and what was happening, how it was funded through prohibition, through his dad. That their wealth was so that they could have the freedom to run for the presidency. We're going to move into the history of who killed JFK. And I hope you find it fascinating. And definitely email me, like historyondrugspodcast@gmail.com. I have conversations with people. You tell me to fuck off. You tell me you don't believe, whatever. It doesn't matter, man. I love to engage. You don't have to listen to this. I mean, you don't want to. But if you are, yeah, let's chat. So this would also create some really shitty relationships in government and at the highest levels of the FBI, the CIA, and conservative governments, and now far right groups that were happening. And one of the events that kind of highlighted this was early on in Kennedy's presidency. It was something called the Bay of Pigs, right? And the Bay of Pigs, where Castro was the leader of Cuba. He was for communism. He had a relationship with Khrushchev from the Soviet Union. A very scary time. Nuclear weapons were pointed at each other, and now Russia, the Soviet Union, could put nuclear weapons in Cuba, which is like, well, I don't know, an hour boat ride from Miami. So we don't want any nuclear weapons there. I get that. And Castro, as a communist, like all the industry and people opening restaurants, and then people like the mob who had casinos and their hands on there, Castro poo-pooed all that because the government in communism controls everything. So now, like, that wasn't good, and it kind of screws up their gross domestic product, their trade, imports, everything. But I don't know, the government gets rich in communism, but it gets rich in capitalism and democracy too. It would appear, because we have senators that make $170,000 a year, yet they're worth millions and millions of dollars. So governments get rich. They win the game. So Castro needed to get out of power because we couldn't have that relationship. He wasn't in. He wasn't for negotiating, and Kennedy didn't support communism at all. But he promoted peace. However, the U.S. government, the CIA, they wanted to kill Castro. Like the CIA, man, we go around the world trying to assassinate people very successfully. Presidents up into the guy in the White House say there's plans and backgrounds like we got to take this guy out, whatever it is. Um, but it just couldn't work. And you should Google this. I'm not even going to go. I'm not even going to say one thing. If you Google, look at the different ways the CIA try to plan to kill Castro. It's like crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff. I'm just going to leave that as a little teaser. You go look up that yourself. It's not normal. Another thing they did is the CIA to this guy, Angleton. And I'm not going to drop a lot of names because when I do some JFK research or I'm listening to something or an interview, there's so many players and names, at least there's so many conspiracies. And I want to try to keep it cogent, but it's hard to do because there's a lot of moving parts. Thus, so many conspiracy theories. Because like, well, it could have been that, it could have been that. But this is important. Is Angleton, CIA guy, basically organized a meeting with all the mob leaders. And this is documented. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The U.S. government, CIA, was like, listen, how about you guys go kill Castro? You guys love to kill people, right? That's what you do. He's like, how do you kill him? Like, yeah, we just pop him in the head in broad daylight. That's how the mob does it. It is. So they were going to pay him like only like 150 grand or something. And uh, the mob's like, no, we don't want the money. We're going to do it free. Hey, we're patriots. You know, we got this. So that plan didn't work out, but there was a relationship between the mob and the CIA. And in the 1960s, early, the mob really built up after Prohibition. And once the alcohol smuggling is done, they go into the heroin trade. There's a lot of relationships with the CIA. We're going to have another episode on some of that, but we talked a little bit about it in season 1. We mentioned a little bit of Vietnam and the heroin trade and Air America, which was tied to the CIA. There's a lot of sketchy shit the CIA does. I think we could do a whole episode on just the CIA using drugs and turning the other way to fund covert operations like the crack epidemic of the 1980s that started in Los Angeles. So, anyways, the government's in bed with the CIA. There's some payouts, there's some relationships, but the Kennedys, who also used the mob, right? Remember we talked about it, to get elected, West Virginia, Illinois. Well, Bobby Kennedy's the attorney general. He's, we are going to take down the mob. Well, you can't do that. They got you elected. Hey, the deep state, the military industrial complex, trying to work with the mob to kill off another leader. Like, go easy. Go easy. So what they do is one of the guys that was working to help train people and fund and finance and organize for the Bay of Pigs, which was this big episode that happened at the beginning of Kennedy's president, why the military industrial complex, like, this guy ends up getting deported, and they like don't just deport him, they like embarrass him, they like leave him in the middle, I don't know, South America somewhere, like, bye. And then he's got to go to like Sicily or Europe, and he comes back here and he hates the Kennedys. And he's also very important in training Cuban exiles that didn't want to be communists. They wanted to take their country back. So the CIA is like, yo, we were working with the president prior to you, Eisenhower, right? We like Dwight. And yeah, we're going to just go in with the military and take over Cuba. And Kennedy's, no, we're not. No, we're not. That's not what we're doing. He's like, but we got all these exiles. We got them guns. They're getting trained. The mob's kind of helping them. They're working with us on that. No, we're not. Let's make peace. Like, I'll talk to Khrushchev. Let's make peace. Let's put the nuclear tensions down. And ultimately, can I negotiate that there won't be nuclear weapons pointed at America and Cuba, and then we will remove ours from Turkey. And now today with Ukraine, there's all kinds of like promises made over the years that like, what you said you'd protect us. Different conversation. So the Kennedys are pissing people off. The mob. Now the Cuban exiles, so the CIA is like, yeah, we got thousands of these guys. We're going to send them in. And so Kennedy's like, you can send them in, but I'm not sending the military. So if these exiles go to Cuba, storm the beach, they take over the Capitol building, get their government, then I'll come in. I just got elected here, man. I want peace. I don't want to start a war, with communism, like right in our backyard. So the CIA hates this, and they start doing stuff behind Kennedy's back. Like, not cool. And these guys march in, the exiles, they get killed, captured. It's a total embarrassment and a failure. Like, it's a disaster. And Kennedy's like, why did you do? I said you could do this, not this. And they do like 10 things. They say, do this thing. And you made me look like a fool. So Kennedy doesn't like the old guard, the military industrial complex, and now he's pissed at the CIA. And one of the original old guard military industrial complex guys is Alan Dulles. He's basically the godfather of the CIA. He created it. And he built it up from the OSS that came out of like World War II. And Kennedy fires him. He says, like, fuck you. You know what? CIA, I want to scatter you in a million pieces, or some corny quote he says. He wants to shut it down because he is so pissed off at what they did, and he feels like they're doing sketchy shit all over that he doesn't approve of. He doesn't want to start conflict. He wants peace. Was it from that acid trip he did with Mary? No, I don't know, but he wants peace. And so his policy platform and what he would get out to the world as he was the president was civil rights. Like it's time to desegregate. We cannot have blacks here, whites here, civil rights. We got to move this forward. We need good schools and education and healthcare and healthy meals. We got to bring people out of poverty, and we just can't have a whole race of people poor, right? And then white America is still the KKK back then. I was like, no, we hate Kennedy. Like, what are you talking about? Screw those people. So he promoted peace, and he promoted like the space race. He said, we're gonna put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. And I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. A little bit in the Kennedy stuff, I don't know if it's conspiracy theories, but there's two things I question. Some of the stuff we're talking about today, I'm not sure about the moon. Like, you can't convince me that. And I'm not a wing nut. I just don't get a different show. But how do you get through the Van Allen belt? And if you don't know what that is, look it up. And where'd the technology go? Oh, we just lost it and we can't go there. And like, anyways, weird. I don't know. But it's also weird. I don't know. There'd be too many people involved to shoot it in a studio. So I don't know. Not the conversation. I'm getting carried away a little bit. Um, my allergies. So Kennedy is just pissing everybody off with peace and love. And it is the 60s, right? And it's pretty soon peace and love is going to be part of the pop culture of America. And Kennedy will have a big part in that, only it wouldn't be what you think. Um, so he's trying to negotiate with Khrushchev, the leader of Russia. He's like, let's stop the nuclear talk, the Cold War. It's crazy. And we know that Khrushchev respected Kennedy and wanted peace. Even though he tried to play him, he looked at him as a little bit juvenile, a little bit immature. But when Kennedy dies, Khrushchev's son writes in his memoirs years later that his dad actually wept because he's like, this is the guy the world needs. And he was actually sad for it, which would make you think maybe we'll take Russia off the board, but we'll get to that too. So there's all these things happening, right? And like and Kenny's on drugs. He's still on drugs through all of this, like negotiating all this stuff. And I'm sure he's making mistakes. Like Vietnam. Vietnam's another military industrial complex. Like Nixon wanted to, and even Kennedy's vice president and the CIA, the FBI, and all the old guard and George Bush, CIA, they want to like bring troops in. This communism. The whole 60s was like, let's push back communism. We don't want it to spread. But it's really, let's send troops and military movements and build stuff and establish resources like a 20th century form of British colonization, right? Let's just move our people around the world, take resources, put up weapons, and just keep democracy, which is cool because communism does have its flaws, but it's got its benefits. I mean, we learn it's all bad because in history, we're always right, except for when we're not. So yeah, so he's trying to promote peace, and this pisses people off. So right now, inside the government, the CIA, FBI, the old guard, the military industrial complex, they don't like Kennedy. In fact, they despise him, and they think he's a danger to America, right? And not to mention the womanizing and the substance, like he's a danger to America. They think he was soft on communism. And he wasn't. He just wanted peace. I guess I wasn't alive there. So I'm reading primary research, listening to people, looking at archives documents. I love to learn, putting it together. And I'm like, okay, you take away all his personal stuff. He could have been a little bit Obama-ish, where Obama's like, he gives you the perception of hope. He's like, yes, yes, yes. This guy's going to make great things happen. And then 26 little kids get shot in like the next town over from where I am, by the way. And he can't even pass like a small gun legislation. That didn't have to change gun rights for all the gun people, but just a gesture to just the families, if anything, whose first grade children were blown to bits, right? Or to America that was weeping. Obama cried, he gave a little bit, but he could have been just a windbag because at the end of his terms, and I liked Obama. Like I don't care. I voted for Obama, but I was disappointed with him at the end because I thought he was all talk, right? And he really never came through in anything. I'm not like a big anti-gun guy. I was using that as an example of where every time there's a opportunity to close something, either the Congress or his own party or the opposing party or the populace, like, oh, I can't do it. Like, just do it. Have belief. So I don't know if Kennedy was Obama-esque in with aspirations because he didn't really get a lot of policies through, got some ideas, but who knows what would happen? That's the part that's not fair. Like Vietnam, there was only like 15,000 troops when he was elected, and he wanted to get them home and negotiate. Like that's not a lot. He wanted to pull them home. So here we go. Let's get into who killed JFK and why. We're talking about a lot of people that hate him. Oh, the Cuban exiles that got killed on the beach. Well, they freaking hated him, right? They're like, this guy, you left all our people out to dry. Why would you do that? And the mob, and then the guy Marcello in New Orleans who worked with the Cuban exiles that they deported, and the mob that helped Kennedy get elected, and now they're trying to arrest them and make them look like idiots in public and like enemies of America. They're really pissed at Kennedy. You don't want to piss off the mob, no matter who you are. And on the backside, the CIA is trying to work with the mob to take out leaders around the world. So a lot of weird stuff's happening behind the scenes. And then Castro himself. Like, even though Castro wanted peace, he liked Kennedy enough. He was, again, like Khrushchev thought Kennedy was just a kid, even though he was 43. Like, he doesn't know anything. But he, they tried to kill him, the Kennedys. Like, Bobby was part, like, so he might have wanted to kill him too. And of course, Khrushchev is the Cold War, the Russians, the nuclear stand down. You have agents, we have agents. We need to be the global leader. We need to get the man on the moon first. So maybe they killed him, right? So there's a lot of people. We're going to go into the motivations at the end, or maybe none of them killed him. Um, so Kennedy now, it's 1963. And 1964 is an election year, right? So he's going around the country, shaking hands, kissing babies, and Democrats in Dallas need it. Southern conservatives hate civil rights. They love war. They hate everything he's against. So he's going to go to Texas because some leading Democrats there are actually publicly battling, and Kennedy thinks they're embarrassing, and he wants peace because we can't, they can't win the White House if there's not peace. So he's going to go down. So he picks some cities to go to in the fall of 1963. He's going to give some speeches, raise some money, do some parades, like some motorcades, drive around, and he makes a plan to go to Chicago in the fall of 1963, which would be the last season Kennedy would be on this earth. Spoiler alert. And the Secret Service finally comes and says, we can't go to Chicago. There's a plot to kill Kennedy. Like, what do you mean? Well, this lady had a rooming house. These guys, they had literally, she saw it. She walked in the room, they had guns, ammunition, and they had like where they're going to kill, shoot places in a high building, and they had military stuff. Like they look like ex-military in the sea. But we never heard this. Have you heard this? No. Can you find this? You can find the documents because they're released and some of the archive released, but like, where are the people? Did they get arrested? No. Why? So it was going to be a lone gunman in a high building that was ex-military, but in Chicago. And then they just brush it under the rug like nothing happens. Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of weird. Like, you think somebody would say something. Then he was going to go to Miami to do, I think, an event at the Orange Bowl and do something in Miami. And there was a plot to kill him there. So, like, it's in Miami. So he ends up going to Tampa. And, like, now the Secret Service is like, and they did it anyways. We got to go into the areas. Right. And this is the FBI, Secret Service. Go vet the area, man. We don't want any crazy nuts around. We don't want people that hate the government, and we're going to, look in Tampa and clear them out. They do this today. So they vet. Tampa goes off smooth. They're coming to Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. So on that day, they come to Dallas, fly in. There's a breakfast. I think there's a breakfast in Fort Worth. And they actually fly again to Dallas. Yeah. Then they get in a motorcade, right? And the motorcade, the streets of Dallas are lined with adoring Kennedy fans. All the women like, he's the Beatles. Oh my God, it's great. It's so handsome. People are waving, and it's great. And Kennedy's in a one of those old school, he's a convertible, and Governor Connolly's in the front with his wife, Secret Service driving. Kennedy's in the back, right? And Jackie O's in it. And they're in the front. And there was threats in Dallas. They knew it was a tough place to go, but they decided not to put like the Pope mobile. They have like the protective bubble, which by the way is not bulletproof back then. It was just plastic, but probably would have stopped a bullet. They didn't want it. They said Kennedy didn't want it, and maybe so. I'm not going to do a conspiracy on that. But Kennedy also wanted the Secret Service to back off the car so he could hear the people and wave, and he could have conversation with the people in the car. And said the Secret Service is covering him, which is kind of a bad move. Turns out, like, should rethink that idea. So the Secret Service are all in the car behind him, right? And then there's Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ, the vice president, and then other people. I haven't looked down at my notes once, so I wonder what I'm missing. So like there's a whole the press pool, like senators, everybody's trying to get a photo op. Man, my allergies so bad. So he's going through Dallas, and it's a beautiful day, and everybody's excited, and turns on into Dealey Plaza, and the motorcade's on so, or the route's on so, or they're going to a place called the Trademark to have lunch and give a speech, raise some money. So there's not as many people in this plaza. There's still like hundreds, not thousands. Like there was tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people on the streets all the way to this point. People are in the windows of office buildings, right? So you would think the Secret Service would be like, all right, well, let's have a look here. They vetted people. They took people out of the neighborhood, off the streets. They kept an eye on people. They have tabs on a lot of people. But they'll kind of skip one guy, and that's going to be an important one. So as Kennedy pulls down, he's waving, and then boom, the day America stood still, a president of the United States head blown off, like people there's like babies, like you can see now, we'll talk about why, like boom, nobody knows where shots coming from. People look up, okay, like it sounds like there's 3 shots, maybe there's more. And Kennedy, what happens is, and we're gonna put some images up. First thing that happens is there's shots ring out, and he grabs his throat, and he's like this, and Jackie reaches over to him. And if I get shot through the throat, or you, or most people, like as a shot, like you're probably gonna keel over, right? But he couldn't keel over because he had a stupid back brace on, man. If he didn't have a freaking back brace on, we could see what kind of president and man he turned out to be. Maybe, but probably. So he wasn't going over, he's just kind of hunching instead of just collapsing, which would have took his head out of the way. And then something that will change the way people look at the American government, what people argue, why there's secrets still hidden today, who's hiding them. More shots fired. Wait, more? Yeah. And you can see, because there's a film, we're going to talk about it, which is crazy to watch. Boom, his head blows out, like skin up the top, big blowout in the back, his brains go all over. Jackie O jumps in the back, and she's like grabbing his brains, like that's her instinct. Like it's her instinct. And then finally, Secret Service, Clinton Hill runs up and jumps on the car, and his job is not for Kennedy. Like he does what he's assigned. Like it's not like, oh, sorry, Jackie, he's got to protect her. Where's JFK's guys? Nobody's jumping up on him, and I guess everybody's in shock. And the driver, Secret Service, slams the brakes, right? People think it's a conspiracy. It's not. He was like, what the fuck just happened? Because he was only going like 11 miles an hour, but he should have just took off, and he didn't. Like, and I'm sure he lives with that. But like, you're like, what? Hey, everybody all right? And then when he figured out, like, go, and they fly out of there, and that's it. And then within like a half hour, John F. Kennedy is pronounced dead at Parkland Hospital. It's devastating because at that time, America, like no matter what it was, everybody got all the news at once. It wasn't like today where you get it, all right, phone, I'm at work, I'm in a meeting. Like it was all at once and from small resources. So it hit hard, man, right? People were weeping. It didn't matter which race or culture you're from, the age, like people that didn't vote for him or support him, like the footage of that period is just remarkable. And maybe he wasn't morally the greatest guy in the world and made some poor judgment, but he was fighting for the little guy. He was fighting for world peace. That was his mission. He was fighting for civil rights. He hired like a black Secret Service man. It was controversial. He was like Martin Luther King and having a make sure he had a lot of prominent African Americans at the White House and get the schools together. He was trying to do good. So it's sad. Like that's a sad thing. Here's a guy doing good. He wasn't just another rich old white guy going to war, taking the money, like, doing stuff to benefit him and his cronies as the president, like Biden, Trump, Clinton, right? It's like Eisenhower, Roosevelt. But he was presenting as a do-gooder. So I wasn't there. I don't know. But research would show that that's what was happening. So a lot of shit goes down, chaos ensues, right? And so this is where we're going to talk about who killed JFK, because it's one of the greatest murder mysteries in the world, right, of all time. And there's so many fucked up things at every corner, whether it's a conspiracy or not. One thing is a fact in JFK, when you research this, there are so many things that are like, what? And I'll give you one now, and then we're going to go into a bunch. But here's just one, right? Let's just do one. Lee Harvey Oswald. Actually, let's teaser. We're going to come back to it because I don't want to jump around because this is confusing and I get excited and I'll forget something. So Kennedy's goon. They pull the body out of there, take him home. LBJ sworn in. LBJ's like, we got to find out what happened. We got to do an investigation. So right away, they get a committee going. It's called the Warren Commission, right? And then here's one of the things where you're like, what? So on the Warren Commission, they're going to figure out how they're going to investigate this. Like what went down? And one of the main guys to filter information that the Warren Commission will see, especially from like the industrial complex, the deep state, global affairs, witnesses, is Alan Dulles. What? Didn't Kennedy fire that guy? That guy hate him? The guy that ran the CIA, he was like one of the most prominent guys on the Warren Commission. He's like in charge. Like LBJ put him there. That seems kind of stupid, right? That's just that one thing alone is stupid, but there's a lot of one things alone in this. So why I'm talking about the Warren Commission first is they do an investigation. Then they come out, and now here's what they say happened. And this was the official line. The news people went on. And actually, the news people that day were great, right? This footage. I mean, they're like, is this thing on? He's tapping the mic. This guy's got a suit. He's like trying to interview a cop. Like, you tell us about the president. But he's literally token a stoke. He's smoking a cigarette. Like, and he's interviewing the guy. He's like, so what did you see? It's like a different time period. Oh, the news, Walter Cronkite, the president has been shot. It's like just watching the footage is very powerful and scary in the chaos and the panic. The Warren Commission comes out and they release like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of documents and stuff. But they release a summary. They put it like print all the newspapers and basically we're going to summarize the summary. We're going to make it cogent. This is it. This is what they found. A guy named Lee Harvey Oswald who worked at the Texas School Book Depository right there. He was on the 6th floor in the window. He took a Italian Carcano Mannlicher rifle, bolt action, boom, 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 3 shots. Killed the president from behind. They'll eventually find 3 casings up there in the 6th window. They'll find a gun that maybe belonged to him. We're going to talk about that. And no conspiracy. Nobody else was involved. This was the work of a lone gunman who's just a crazy guy. Okay. And that was it. I learned that as a kid in history. That's it. Now, you don't have to be conspiracy theorists to start questioning things, right? This is where information is awesome and networks and resources and talking like this and listening to other people and like documents, right? And so one thing they did is like they sealed the documents of what was going on in the government around and some of the witness stuff and stuff they didn't put in the report. And they're like, we can't release this stuff until like every Kennedy's dead. And they're like, no, that's why? Like, what are we gonna? Are we hiding something? Why? Like, he got shot. Like, you said, this guy shot him. Yeah, but we're not gonna release these documents for a long time. Like, let's let everybody involved die, and then we can release the documents. To this day, through all the presidents, and all the presidents saying we're gonna release Kennedy documents. Trump just said it. Biden said it. Obama, Clinton, they released documents, but there's still documents that haven't been released. And we know they're hiding some because why wouldn't you just release them all? Like, what's in there? You think somebody wrote like, "Hey, we killed Kennedy"? It's in here. No, but there's got to be hiding something, right? And so what starts to happen is people start asking questions about the Warren Commission and what they did because the people that were in Texas that day started being like, wait, that's not what happened. The shots came from over there. They didn't go through the back of his head. He got he got his back of his head blown out. Oh, I threw my pen. We know it's a good episode on throwing pens. He got the back of his head blown out. Like, there's shots from everywhere, man. Okay, okay. What do you mean? So let's talk to some people. Well, didn't the Warren Commission talk to them people? They talked to a couple of people, but they didn't talk to everybody. Like, you can't talk to everybody. And like Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy that you arrested, like, what's up with that dude? Who is that dude? Oh, yeah. Well, Lee Harvey Oswald is actually an ex-military intelligence guy. He trained in Japan, military intelligence. He was working with spy planes. A lot of documents say that he was working with CIA, doing some things. But then, like, he defects to Russia one day and is like, I hate America. I'm moving to the Soviet Union and I'm going to tell them about our spy planes and give them all our secrets. And we're like, oh, whoa, really? You can do that? He goes in on Saturday, declares it. That's like, I don't think you have to declare it. Like, just go. So what was happening at this time was Russia and America were like releasing like ex-military people right to the other country. Like they were just going there to live. I want to live in the Soviet Union. Oh, I want to live in Palm Beach. Well, that's probably a little better. So he goes there. Now, this was a guy at the time, Lee Harvey Oswald, a young guy who was dirt poor, came from a poor family, never made a lot of money. He couldn't like do certain things.